All right, we are recording. Welcome to the Boulder Junction Access District Parking and Travel Demand Management Joint Commission's meeting. It is September 17th, 2025, and I will call roll. Kevin Knapp is not here yet. Robin Ronan.
Here.
Daniel Eisenman.
Present.
Rebecca DuMichelle.
Present.
Kevin Kraus is not here yet. I will now turn the meeting over to Chair Ronan and DuMichelle for procedural items.
Hello, everyone. So we are looking for an approval on our July 2025 minutes. Do we have any corrections that the commissioners would like to point out? I'm not hearing anything online. Are there any comments in the room? Okay, I am taking that as a no. So do you want us to vote with the commissions? I don't think we have a quorum for both commissions yet. So do we just do the parking commission's approval at this point?
How about we wait, because Kevin, both Kevins are planning to be here at some point, so we
Okay. So we'll just move on to the next item, if that's okay then. Tabling that, I would like to open up the floor for public participation. Do we have any members of the public, either in person or online, that would like to make a comment at this point?
Okay. Yeah, I see a raised hand.
I see Travis. Travis, I am going to ask you to unmute and go ahead and make your comments to the commission.
Well, hi, folks. Just wanted to say congratulations on the opening of the RTD station. It's a real plus for the area. With this change actually preceding it, there's been a bit of a bump in concerning events in the building, which I share with the RTD station. As you know, in the heart of Boulder Junction, there's this unique cubist, collection of different usages. There's the parking building. There are where I live, which are residences that surround the parking building on the north, on the west, and on the south. On August 30th, I heard someone walking directly above my rooftop. And, this is where, well, I'm looking at, let me just slow down and again, greet everybody, there's a few jurisdictional ambiguities highlighted by recent vandalism. And this is kind of coming with all the greater attention to the block. It seems to me, it seems like a variety of people who are, living perhaps unaccommodated around this structure, and they use this structure or try to use it on occasional bases and wind up mistreating it. So there's vandalism. And in this case, on August 31st, a person was throwing cinder blocks off of the roof of my building, of my roof. So they trespassed onto the parking structure, then onto the residences, and then they vandalized these antennas that are directly above my unit. I don't know whose antennas these are, but now they don't have ballasts. This person threw cinder blocks direct from the 6th floor parking structure down to the throw space between the building and the train tracks. And a resident was just out there walking their dog. Came way too, close of a situation in which this person's breach of many levels of jurisdiction, the city's, my own, etc., put her at risk because of his actions up there. There is going to be a careful conversation about how to handle greater utilization of the building if there's also going to be greater situations like this that endanger residents who live at the building, for whom there should be some basic, standards of safety. Did that make any sense, guys?
No, it absolutely did. Travis, do you mind if I ask you a couple of follow-up questions just so we have full details of this? First of all, that sounds like a very scary incident, and I'm very sorry that you experienced that. That's not acceptable. Were Did you file a police report this time? So I just wonder if this has been
Yes.
documented with the city.
Yes, I have, and I've spoken with Boom Management, who I suppose manages the building itself. So now it's a question of whether or not we can get a isolated picture of the trespasser. This is one of the issues that comes up around the jurisdictional ambiguities. If someone trespasses on the city and then gets right up to a resident's exit point, and they are assaulted or something like that, if something happens there, it becomes I'm sorry to open up another box of worms there. Let me see if I can backtrack and answer your question particularly. What I mean is, we want to capture the video from the city, from Boom Management, on who trespassed on my roof.
Mhm.
Do you follow where these become pretty close together as we're mixed use? We're working with a paradigm of mixed use structures. Now we've got a problem of accountability, where it concerns how can we police who comes to our door or to our roof.
Okay, so I'm hearing primarily a security concern here and understanding who has which obligations in this case. For our
Thank you
city,
for hearing that. I think
yeah,
what I'm really just pointing to in this particular case, the case itself is 25-08211. If anyone needs to look that up to get those details, it's particularly in this instance, we could find the suspect if we residents, so we suppose, should be able to find the suspect if we were able to subpoena or capture videos from the parking structure. So it's really now just a question of, do we have a dialectic space for such requests if they come up like this?
I'd like to ask any of the city employees if you'd like to make a comment to our resident on this particular case or have any suggestions of further actions they can be taking.
So I will speak to this particular incident, but mostly to the ongoing safety challenges that we know occur at this location. As you know, the parking district is one of 5 owners of that facility. It speaks to the jurisdictional ambiguity that the resident mentioned. The ownership does not currently own or monitor any cameras as part of that association. There has been talk among the owners to partner with RTD. RTD does have a number of cameras associated with their facility. Advantage Housing, I'm not sure what their security measures are for their ownership, whether when we're talking about roof of the garage or roof of the apartment building. I'd like to learn more about that. We do not currently have any cameras within the garage, although it is something that the ownership has considered in partnership with Boom and RTD.
Thank you so much, Chris. Do we have any other comments from commissioners or questions for the resident?
That was going to be my question, was I didn't even know if we had any cameras, so we don't have any cameras under our purview or ownership. And regardless of who does own any cameras that do exist, it is within the police authority to ask for footage. So that would be a discussion between police and RTD. If we've ruled out that we don't have any to offer, I'm not sure that there's a next step for this commission at this time, other than to continue monitoring and listening about these concerns and to express our sympathy. That is terrifying. So.
I would add, if you don't mind, that there is budget for implementation of cameras. The overall number of incidences at this location have declined over time, although I understand that perhaps with the reopening of the transit center, that might be increasing. I'm not sure exactly when our next ownership association meeting is, but security is one of the regular business items of that. meeting. If the commission would like to recommend that the district ownership support implementation of camera installations, again, we are one of 5 owners in that
Mhm.
conversation. But if that's a statement that you all would like to recommend, we can certainly bring that to the other owners for consideration.
Chris, I have a question. I believe Depot Square, the resident side, is behind key fobs. So that is restricted entry, if I remember, while I've visited the building in the past. As far as entry from the garage side, that's not actually coming through the transit center. The transit center is on the basement level. So is that people that are just walking in from the car entrances?
As far as the camera monitoring would be? for
No,
new cameras?
as far as people accessing the Depot Square.
Sure. So the elevators go all the way from the top floor of the garage into the Depot Square bus station.
Okay.
Folks who are using elevators to access the residential units could also be accessing the transit center and the rooftop.
Okay. And is the top level of the garage, is that above the residence roof, or is it same level? Like how does one get from one to the other?
That's a good question. I've not heard about folks getting on the roof. It looks like Travis maybe has something to add.
Yeah.
The residential building wraps around the garage.
Travis, I'll go ahead and call on you. So if you have more information on that you might be able to shed light on.
Yeah, it's here's like the, center of the big Doppler of all the density questions is this central elevator. Because it's so mixed, it's so available to the public. It goes down to the basement, to the transit center, and up to the 4 floors of the residences. If you get to the 5th floor, which is just the parking spots on the roof deck, you have a clearance on your left where one can, and anyone who is familiar with Boulder culture, knows that if you can climb it, it's there. If it's there for you, and there's enough access for a person to climb over basically a 3-foot wall that tears up to like a 3.5 or 4-foot wall, and then step onto the west residence, the rooftops of the west residences. They can then navigate around to the southwest corner of the building, and then follow the south side of the building, which is where the incident with the cinder blocks began. And then they can actually climb up that wall, but it's very difficult at that point, or they have to go all the way around to the elevator itself in order to reasonably get back onto solid ground or onto legal footing. So that left turn from the elevator shaft, I think, is one place where some kind of personnel barrier could be considered. We're looking at I'm looking at, of course, whether or not we can capture or find images that are not within our jurisdiction but are hopefully available. But I think there's also some reason to discuss a personnel barrier there where otherwise someone can easily climb. I don't see people climbing to the north side of the building, which is also maybe a 4 or 5 foot climb and a small drop. But I don't see vandalism happening so much there. I'm sure people walk on it, but I don't see vandalism. People could also
So
sleep.
just to wrap this one up,
Mhm.
we can certainly pass on to the owners association this issue to make sure that they're aware. And Boom Properties, as the property manager, would be responsible for implementing any such barrier or mitigation approach to prevent folks from trespassing onto the rooftop. So we'll bring this topic to the next owners association.
Thank you all for listening so well.
Thank you so much, Travis. And please join us for any other meetings.
I will attend to.
Do we have any other members of the public or concerns that we should be bringing at this time?
There are no other members of the public online.
I don't see any in the room either, in which case I will just point out the next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Now, we don't discuss these unless there are any questions, but do we have any questions from the commissioners?
I'll ask one. Has there been any more participation in the district for the outdoor dining?
What was the question again? I didn't quite hear.
The outdoor dining pilot program is set to end next year. So have we had any additional interest in outdoor dining pilot from any of the restaurants in the district?
We have
Not,
not received any.
sorry,
Oh.
hi, Chris.
Here we go.
We have not received additional interest in that area. We are planning on looking into extending the pilot to potentially make it a permanent offering beyond 2027. So just wanted to put that out there that we're working on that currently.
Okay, and then slightly related to that, but maybe we can cover under items from commissioners is what will happen to the depot building now that the roadhouse has closed?
And then question, another, who owns that building? Does BJAP do?
It's complicated. The district does not own the city. And if there are questions on this, I'll answer real quickly and we can discuss if matters because I want to make sure that we get to our other agenda items. City owns the building. We have a long-term lease with Peterson Development Corporation who refurbished the building. They subleased the building to the restaurant operator. So Peterson did the improvements. I imagine, I don't know all the inner workings. They might have, the lease may have come to an end. And I imagine they're looking for a new tenant, but I've not had that conversation.
Thank you, Chris. All right, I have no other questions on consent agenda.
Do we have any questions in the room? Okay. Will, you're up with the Boulder Transportation Connections update.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. Travis, thank you for your diligent residence and being a very astute and communicative resident. Appreciate that. On a happy note, as Travis mentioned, we had a big celebration for the reopening of the RTD station. This was on September 3rd, and just prior to the Labor Day holiday weekend. My team designed and sent out, oh, the camera's not going to like this, essentially a mailer postcard. This is approximately 8 inches wide, 5 inches tall, that went into thousands of residential and business mailboxes in the district. And we were really happy with the turnout. We had 45 people RSVP. We had 7 different mobility partners there. Community Vitality helped us with the permitting. And we had at any given time 40 or 50 people in the plaza. So it was a vibrant atmosphere, both with state and local officials, as well as some of the property management coordinators. I guess I should distinguish that some of the property managers and the ownership, as well as some of the points of contact, who I tend to email with several times a month, sometimes even several times a week, and just building a little more personal rapport with both residents and those points of contact to see not just the RTD transit station come to life, but transportation demand, interest, really a lived experience. My kid was there, so the lowest age was 3.5, and we had a few seniors from the Bluebird community as well as Depot Square who didn't state their age, but were in a retirement era. So more than 60 years of generations were represented. We were really happy with that. We could assume an approximate turnout between 100 and 125 people across an hour and a half. And as some of you know, we've done many of these events and been rained out or had a severe weather impact. The weather was wonderful. So we had a really good time. So we're very happy about that. Immediately at that station is one of Boulder B-Cycle's oldest sets of kiosks. And so they've actually done some shuffling to revitalize that particular B-cycle station where it can still hold 10 to 12 bicycles, but there's newer first generation docks, so more reliability, and they're putting more attention on balancing now that we've got that transit station active on weekdays. So I'll put a side note that service for the FF4 route from Boulder Junction to Denver Civic Center and the AB2 route from Boulder Junction to the Denver Airport are currently weekday service. So from just before 6 a.m. in the evening, but there is no midday service and no weekend service currently. So we're trying to keep that messaging pretty consistent that we now have weekday service in the district. B-Cycle is working to supplement that even more. Colorado Car Share has an electric vehicle that's immediately inside the garage that Travis was mentioning in public comment, as well as across the street with 2 other electric vehicles. So we see a great concentration TDM opportunity there. The residential development that's immediately across the street is WYE Flats. I'm not sure if that's an acronym, but it's part of the 4-star commercial property, and they manage a lot of the different undergraduate student housing up on the hill and around town. So it's honestly been challenging to get them in communication with such a surge of leasing interest across town. But we did get mailings to their new address, their new building complex, which has 30 units, essentially affronting Junction Place and Spruce and continuing back on 31st Street as well. So we're seeing more and more interest and growth. I've developed a great partnership with Boulder Commons, who has their office on Bluff close to the Timber Building, but they now have what I would call the Pearl cluster of 30th and Pearl, where there is 30 Pearl affordable housing, as well as some ground level commercial, such as open studios. They have a year-round art gallery there in a public space. And now Boulder Commons has almost 100% occupancy of over 80 units right there. So we're seeing a lot of this uptake in growth. They'll be onlining their 3rd property, which will be just on the north side of Spruce with another, I think it's 74 units in the coming weeks. So we've crossed the 2,000 mark threshold of residential population in the district, which is really exciting. And I should check my notes so that I don't leave anything out in all that terms of excitement. I think that is exactly what I covered there. I'm happy to field any questions that might arise.
Do we have any questions from commissioners in the room? I see Rebecca.
Well, I had the event on my calendar and I did not look at it, and it was in the middle of the week and I didn't go, but I'm glad to hear that it was a success. So thank you for your work on that.
It's a long time coming. We really enjoyed it. We did have Boulder Police there offering bicycle registrations. That's kind of a unique element to our event programming, in addition to just our mobility partners and municipal stakeholders. So they were using the Bike Index platform, which is internationally recognized registration platform that many different police departments, including Boulder and I believe Denver, used for bicycle recovery. So that was a nice supplement to the sort of traditional TDM programs that we advocate for, is having the individual ownership bicycles and scooters and other devices being supported by Officer Trujillo and the Community Safety Department.
I have a logistical question on that, Will. We have a registration program also on campus. Is there a cross usage of information for people that register on campus with the Boulder PD or not?
I don't have an exact detail, but I do know a few weeks ago at Bike Fest, which is the annual celebration of cycling on Fair and Field. It's amazing. Officer Trujillo was also there with Boulder PD, and they were using that same Bike Index platform. I think the best way to get a comprehensive answer would be checking with the Environmental Center Sam Forsyth is an amazing coordinator, and the email is simply bicycle@colorado.edu for the more year-round registrations of any student and staff cycling property.
Fantastic. And is the city in any way involved with, I just know this is your wheelhouse, are they in any way involved or helpful and responsible with the fact that we expanded the B-Cycle program to be free also for all staff and faculty, not just students?
I might need a reframing of the question. I know
Sure,
that many city
we
staff are.
it used to be that university staff were not eligible for free, just greatly reduced cost. I mean, quite frankly, worth it, $40 a year, but they have eliminated that cost and now it's free for everyone on campus, faculty, staff, and students. I was just curious if that was part of your initiative as well.
No, that would have been an entirely B-Cycle decision, particularly since they're now more for-profit enterprise with bicycle transportation systems. That was a change within the last year, but probably almost a year ago. And just for a quick side note on that, there's some vertical integration. So their hardware, their software, bicycle manufacturing, and the batteries are now sort of within a comprehensive supply chain. I'm assuming that's when the change went, but Kevin Krause would be the best source of authority on that.
I'll look in there. Thanks for humoring me on my issue. Anybody
Totally.
any other questions in the room?
Questions, maybe more on the suggestion. I think the success of that station is getting the word out. I think the mailers or whatever it is that you guys are doing is fine. But we have over 10,000 cars passing by on Pearl Parkway every day. Maybe putting a large banner telling the routes that we're servicing, the fact there's multimodal spikes and car share, getting the word out that this thing is active. Most people don't know. And seldom you'll see a bus coming out. So if you miss it, like you have no idea that this thing is active from the street. So
that's intriguing in terms of information and wayfinding. I defer to the commissioners for how that sort of signage would go, but I think that's a really interesting proposal. And just for a sense of volume, there's essentially 9 buses which are going in and out on each route. So 18 for the morning and afternoons for the 2 routes, which gives us 36 of those branded Flatiron Flyer buses. It's not necessarily correlated. The airport buses are actually still using mostly Flatiron Flyer buses, but from an aesthetic that's showing travel in the district. And we've also got 2 weekends left of Bustang service, which is a similar size coach, but it doesn't go into the transit station. It actually stops on Pearl Parkway just by that Open Studios art gallery. And so at 8 a.m. and 9 a.m., you can go into Estes Park on the Bustang from Boulder Junction, and then come back at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, just on the southern side of Pearl Parkway at Rev housing community.
So I guess 2 things now that you mentioned that. One is sort of the immediate, getting a giant vinyl banner printed and pasted up against the building to get the word out immediately. And then second, working on something a little more permanent to share the story of what's happening in there.
I like both of those ideas as a TDM program manager. That's a little outside of my scope, but I love the idea and happy to explore it further with the group.
Great.
I think that might actually be a question, well, that could go back to RTD as well to see what they have in their marketing budget, because that is, we want to enable that, but that really is advertising the renewal of their service and boosting ridership. So.
May I ask a question here? Could a possible future parking sign also include information on bus routes?
It's so funny, yeah.
Does this come up?
We will talk we'll talk about very massive signing at the budget conversation.
Great.
Yeah, I think that's in section C of point 6, which is our next topics. Any other questions for Will? Thank you so much.
Great. I'll just close saying next Thursday, the 25th, we do have our Transportation Connections quarterly luncheon. It'll be held at the Chamber of Commerce, supported by the City of Boulder, and it's an open invitation to everyone, not just chamber members. So if any of you are free and interested, it's 11:30 to 1. And we do request an RSVP because we're providing lunch. So to get the accurate count on that, and we'll have Chris Haglund from the Transportation Department, as well as 2 other presentations on regional mobility next Thursday, the 25th.
Do you have a calendar link or invite you can share with the group on that?
I'll put that in the chat directly to our RSVP site.
Thank you so much.
Great. Nice to see you all.
Thank you. So having said that, we are moving on to matters from staff. I'll
take over from here if you don't mind for the matters
Great.
of staff. We are going to change things up. I think Chris Haglund, is in New York City right now celebrating his son's 21st birthday. So we're not going to have him today. There's a written update that's been provided. We can try to help answer questions about that. But first, we actually want to go to Mark Davison with Parks and Recreation. He's here to share an update on the work related to the Boulder Junction Pocket Park.
Just one moment.
Maybe while he's queuing that up, I'll let you all know we've heard this topic come up many times from commissioners and communities. So really excited to be able to partner with Parks and Rec. There is a financial component question that we are hopeful to be able to contribute to this project to make it success, and we'll be asking you all about that as well. But with that, I will hand it over to Mark.
Nice segue. Thank you, Chris. And a little bit of a time filler there. Yeah, my name's Mark Davison. I'm the planning manager for Parks and Recreation. Been with the city about 10 years and worked in parks for 30 years. So I can't really do anything else. Pretty useless outside of parks. What we're going to talk tonight is the advancement of the Boulder Junction Pocket Park. I know I've been with Parks Department in this current role for 3 years. So Chris, you might even have a little bit more history on this site than myself. But here's a little diagram I pulled up, I believe from 2012, when the concept came through for Boulder Junction. And you'll see that little pink area with the asterisk. And that asterisk says, let's build a pocket park. It's about 1/4 of an acre in size. And what the community asked for was basically gathering areas and play areas was the 2 main sort of items that came up. Also the idea of places for fitness. As this is less than a 1/4 acre site, it's hard to fit everything the community wants into this. So we have to think about that, and you'll see that emerge in the design. The other thing I'd point out is that you see the red line showing East Mapleton ball fields. So in order to provide park service levels, that's a park within 1/4 mile of communities. And that service level, just to be clear, will be changing because it didn't take into account things like density and equity. It's an old service level, we're updating that. But at the time, there's money also separately set aside to remove one of those ball fields to provide more full service park, with picnic shelters and there's larger places to gather, fitness, etc. So there is a future project in 2027, 2028 for East Mapleton to better serve the Boulder Junction community, and that's paid for out of that development tax fund. But at the moment, we're focused in on the Boulder Junction Pocket Park. In the Parks Department, we updated our own department plan in 2022. So this just gives you a sense of some of the things we look for across the system of 96 parks in Boulder. Things like community health and wellness, youth engagement and activity, community relationships, just, pretty straightforward stuff. There's no surprises there. But we are seeing that a little bit of a focus on youth and the health and wellness, and that is actually through connecting with each other. And then just to show how this is prioritized across the system, this map on the left, the dark blue to the darker black shows the priority of where we need to invest due to less services than other areas. And you'll see that East Mapleton and Boulder Junction came up as one of the key areas to invest in. So here's our site. just for orientation, I'm sure you know it all, but here's Goose Creek, here's the depot, got the road running through it, and but these apartment buildings are obviously built now. This is a Google Earth image. One thing I'd slightly point out as we get into this is there's a little nub here, very minor detail, but we worked with the developer. They're going to take that piece over. It's just basically a grass area where dogs frankly can go pee. There's a few trees, but it wasn't as worth us managing that as a park because it was kind of frontage for the building. So that's part of the deal to allow the developer to take care of that. Here's the timeline for the project. We had a bit of a budget thing going on a few months ago and a bit of a hiring freeze. So we had to delay the project. We actually lost a couple of staff, but we've been able to rehire. And so the good news is, with our new landscape architect coming on board, working with our senior landscape architect, this project will restart in November 2025. We're hoping to have construction drawings done early 26. City permitting, I've done that in orange. It's anywhere from 3 to 6 months. Unfortunately, that can go pretty slowly, as we all know. But we'll do our best to expedite that. Construction, we're expecting about 6 to 9 months. So we'll be doing a Q3 opening in 2027. And I'm being very conservative there. I'm hoping with the speed of permitting, I'm hoping with the speed of construction, but you know how things are. Why overpromise? Why not deliver on time or even ahead of time? So here's when we just dive into the park itself. If I start in the to the right-hand side, upper right, we've got a concept for food and beverage. We actually spoke with the depot owners while it was still running a few months ago. And I know I've spoken with Chris that this area was supposed to be an activated area. So small opportunity for 1 or 2 food trucks in this space. Then this idea of intergenerational sitting area, places to relax. And then you move into the 3 types of play. I'll talk about that in a moment. I get quite excited about that part of the conversation, frankly, as a parks person. So I'll dive in and explain some of the thinking there. Small community gathering area. And then that grass pet area I mentioned earlier, you need to have one in here and over because frankly, that's just what happens in parks. That's just a practical aspect of it. Here you see where we're at. We're at schematic design stage. Obviously, I'm not going to. The idea is not to look in detail at this drawing, but just to give you a sense that the work's going on. And then in putting this schematic design together, we always try to do these. This is a SketchUp model. They're not fully accurate, but it allows you to get a sense of space and give you a sense of the park. So up here you see that gathering area with seating, and there's different ways this could play out. We can either do it through sort of like terracing, almost like amphitheater size, or more cafe seating, or even a mix of the two. So we're still figuring out how that plays out, but basically a place to be contemplative, relax, read a book, have a cup of coffee. Then you fall down into the play area, and I'll talk about that in more detail later, and then that sense of community gathering, up to 50 people, and if we did seating, it'd be 25 people. So here you see the sort of entrance area to the park, and this just gives you a sense of arrival in the space. We're looking at the moment, actually, well, we've got a program, because you often end up with DBH, the diameter of a tree at 2 or 3 inches. We're really trying to get 8 to 10 inch to get some real mature quality canopy in there. So we're doing a contract grow up in North Boulder, so we can bring in more mature trees to the site, which gives it, it's just so much better to have that shade, you name it, sense of the place being like fully occupied. And then the nature play, this is kind of interesting. I'll just touch on this for a couple of minutes. And it's this idea of reverse engineering play, and we're doing this frankly across our park system. What you're used to is, you know, 5 features in a playground. It's called post and platform, prefabricated. And it's kind of over the years, unfortunately, moved away from play to a little bit about the manufacturers wanting to make money. So like the life cycle's gone from 20 years to 10 years. It used to be 300,000. It's now 800,000 to 1.2 million. As Chris pointed out, this is a $650,000 budget for the whole site. So how do we think about that? Well, we're sort of reinventing play, and it's something I've worked on for about 20 years now. And it's the idea that instead of just designing prefabricated play for gross motor skills, the physical aspects of play, you start off with kids with the sensory and emotions. You then look at the place and the activities related to those. And then you end up with a design program, and I'll just dive into that a little bit. You think about 6, typically there's 9 sensory sensors, but I'll focus on the 6 that are important. The 5 that you know of, vestibular, this one of sense of movement around you. And that's actually how children perceive the world. It's how all of us perceive the world. So if you start there, what are the sensory inputs? And you'll see next to them things that occur for kids in terms of activities. And related to that on the right is you next then have an emotional response with a cognitive precision, and that causes you either to do a play activity or to have a play activity and respond to it. And we work with a brilliant scientist, Louise Charlotte, CU, who supports us in this, who's kind of internationally renowned for this type of work. From that, and this is examples from kids we work with near Boulder Junction, you work on how to take that emotional response and cognitive decision making and turn that into activities. What typically happens in prefabricated play at the minute is it's very safe, it's routine. So kids actually don't learn anything. And actually, after a while on monkey bars, if you're not using all your senses, when you use all your senses, your tongue pops out as a marker, for example. You'll just do this on the monkey bars using your eyes. Eventually, you'll fall off because you'll get distracted. When you're using all your senses, you're fully concentrated. So that's the interesting thing with discovering where nature plays. It engages all the senses and puts you in that orange and comfortable zone. And that's actually where child's learning occurs, in an uncomfortable space. It's not an unsafe space, it's uncomfortable. At the moment, kids go from safe to overwhelmed because they're not in that uncomfortable space. So this is what we're trying to push with nature play. It's quite a bit of science behind it, quite a bit of practicality. So you end up with 4 types of play. The typical gross motor, we still need that, physical and exert. And in a typical playground, kids will play for 20 minutes, and of the 100 kids, maybe 20 of the more physical A-type kids will dominate that playground for that 20 minutes, and the others will sit on the sideline and then jog. So it's okay still to have the gross, we want that. But we want things like the fine motor, the creative skills, the imaginative and the collaborative skills, and the contemplative and quiet. So we're trying to build those in. Interesting aspect to this, we just put in a player in the civic area using this method. And our concept's pretty small. People might have seen it next to the farmers market. It would have cost us 200,000 using that typical current method. We were able to put it on the ground for 14,000 because we were using the city forestry program where they normally chip trees. We were grabbing them, specking them, grabbing boulders, the materials were free, and using this approach, which is a lot more horizontal play is a way to call it, as vertical, you can actually get more bang for buck. So it's actually cheaper, interestingly. So here you see it then at the site. Chris.
It's in there.
Chris actually shared some images, and initially we were looking at more of this sort of tower structure. And I'll just be honest, I'm not as familiar with the site. I'm getting to know it more. And the tower structure was sort of iconic, and then there's that gross motor side. Chris was like, you know, it is a depot by the main mark. You might want to think of some of the train structures or something relevant to that as a theme. So that's where the gross motor can land. And then here you see at the bottom is some of those sketches of the gathering area, loose parts and materials. To the right, that sort of quiet contemplative. So we can really, what's interesting about that is when these types of areas are built, kids will actually hang out for up to an hour and a half. And the 100 kids will all be playing. And then the parents spend less time on the phones. They actually start to interact with the children. So it's also good for parents. So this is what we're hoping to design. At the top, you see a bunch of precedent images from previous projects worked on that can be like this idea of outdoor classrooms. You can get into those sort of more parent-child relationship areas that have, frankly, a little bit more contemplative to them and potentially bring in a little bit more art. So all of this is still up for grabs because we're at the schematic stage. So the goal is to get some input from you today to start thinking about, is there anything here that we've missed? Is there anything you need that we should add? Is there anything about the local flavor that we should be thinking about, like the depot? And I know I've covered it at the beginning, but as we get into construction drawings, that's what we call design development. We engage the community then to say, tell us about the design in essence. But in construction, as we go through construction, we'll engage the community then, especially when we engage youth. It's nice to get them from space activation involved in the building of the thing, even through volunteer projects, and that helps activate the space. With that, hopefully grand opening in, I'd love to think it's Q1 27, but I'll say Q3 27. So that's basically the presentation. With any questions, comments, reflections?
It's a great presentation, a lot of good thinking behind it. Question on the costs.
Yeah,
What is it, you talked about the one in Central Park versus this one. Is there any of the methods that you used in Central Park happening here, or this is just mostly permanent purchase kind of structures?
thank you. Yeah, I'll dive into that. This is about, this gross motor feature alone would be about $200,000. And we do still want this idea of an iconic or a major feature for that physical aspect of play. And then you can see the rest of the site will land in at about $450,000, the grading, the seating and everything else. So we will be using aspects of the civic area for those other aspects I mentioned. This type of play, which is more of,
Oh, sorry, I did that to button.
no worries. The things like the sort of more quiet contemplative places, the collaborative stage spaces, like the gathering area, that's the stuff we can bring in a much lower cost.
And when you say 250 or $200,000, that was for the train structure kind of thing? Or
Yeah, actually, I haven't costed, Chris sent it to me this afternoon, I haven't quite costed that one yet. The tower structure was $220,000.
Oh, the tower structure.
Yeah.
Got it.
And it's nice, we work with earthscapes, we use natural materials, organic materials, so none of that sort of off-gassing, etc.
Second question is, how many kids do we have in the district?
And it's funny, yeah, there's a mixture, my understanding, and Chris, you might be able to speak this, but me, is we've got young families and singles. So that's why that idea of community gathering, fitness and play that came up in the early, this was pre-me, but in the early engagement process, I think.
I would have to go back, I'd want to review the Placer AI information, understand families and things like
Yeah.
that, I don't know off the top of my head, but. I also know that Boulder Junction, there's the residence, there's also the attraction of the space, something.
Yeah, I checked in with Chris Rangos, planning, senior planning and design services, and there's a sort of three themes that emerged in phase one engagement.
I heard a council member said there's only 5 kids in the district, so it really caught my attention.
All right.
School, the BBSC enrolled in the whole district, so.
I think it's probably more than that.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was like, yeah, it seems incredibly low.
And dogs like play areas as well,
Right.
so,
Yeah, you heard me mention that.
I do have a question, but I want to say Rebecca, I think.
I have several, so if you have one and you want to ask your one, I will defer.
Okay, it's related. I was thinking also about, was there any way to sort of see what the sight lines or visibility are like from the path? Is there a thought that people will be able to, as going past the path, notice that this place has been built out and that the dream to come stop? And I guess.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. It's quite, unfortunately, part of the site needs a bunch of retaining walls, which we lose a lot of space.
Yeah,
But that's why we were looking at more of an iconic structure that you can capture from that lower sight line as you go along the creek. And that would obviously be that attracted to the space.
and I'm assuming it has been thought about how it would be prevented from falling down to the path below.
And as part of risky play, no, just kidding. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, you always put in with the retaining walls, it's the 3-foot drop, it's got a fence with 4-inch gaps.
You mentioned food trucks. Is there water on the site? Is there a water fountain?
At the moment, good question. Sorry, yes, it's funny because someone else was actually using our water supply last year we found for the site. So we've managed to get it metered back to us. So there is irrigation currently set up on the site, which we'll have to redo, being used for mobilization. But yes, there could be a water fountain there potentially. You think that's a good idea?
Well, I didn't know if parks really has a policy around that. It seems that some parks have active drinking fountains and some don't. So,
To be honest, it's pretty random. If you think that was a need in there, we definitely provide it.
I got thinking about people going past on the path with the application stop and the thought of it being a gathering place for food trucks, that water can be useful. So I ignorant as to the problems that having water might.
The water fountains are pretty straightforward as long as you switch them off from windows. So no, it's a really good point. It is a bit, especially with the depot closing, there's not much access to refreshment.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like I can imagine being in that place, or especially if a child there. With very few establishments in the area. Yeah, it's
No, that's an easy one. That's why.
Perhaps the water fountain could actually be on the plaza side, which is paved, and then it catches people going in and out to transit and B-cycle and everything like that, but it's a very short walk from the park if they need it.
Excellent, yeah.
Was that all of your questions? Cool. All right. First of all, I am so excited to see this turn into something that's usable. And I am excited about all of the different uses that you have envisioned here. I will caution that this is a very small area and it is currently very, very sloped. So I am worried that we're trying to do too much in a small area and it won't be enough of any of those things to where it doesn't really work for anybody well. And then when we look at least one of the drawings has that sidewalks and stuff going into it. I would probably prefer not to have any of this very limited space going to impervious cover, because that takes away space from actually being able to sit on the grass and touch grass, and that might be a play space. Obviously if you terrace it, you're going to have walls, but if we can reduce the amount of pavement, because right across the way we have the entire plaza, which is completely paved over. Ordering wise, I think you have the pet relief area towards the bottom of this. One thing I would caution is that in the before times, before all the construction was parked there, we had people that don't have any other area to walk their dog. They were going to this piece of grass. We had people that had mobility challenges that were coming over from the apartments and that were walking right up to the edge, letting their dog off leash and letting them run. I would be concerned, without doing a little bit, surveys and stuff like that, whether or not that would be accessible to them if the pet relief is down towards the bottom. Also, in this particular commission, we've talked about the need for improved visibility at that junction between Goose Creek and the entry ramps going in and out of Goose Creek Path. So if we have dogs that are now possibly off leash, whether or not that's allowed by city law, entering into a blind corner where we've got bikes coming by and in and out, that could be a safety hazard as well. If we go to the map view, the aerial view of the placement, the photo maybe. That one. Has Parks and Recreation considered at all taking advantage of the side of Goose Creek? So that very thin strip that is green, but it's definitely not grass. It's like wild weeds and stuff like that. That runs between 30th and this pocket park, and turning that into seating areas, sunbathing areas, adult interaction areas. Again, this is such a space that has such limited green space that could possibly be a natural extension. And then it's because the creek is there, it's also slightly protected from people running and biking by.
Well, I appreciate it. I think there was 5 points you raised in there, and I'll try and answer them. The one thing that did emerge, which I mentioned earlier, was this note here, which I think hopefully you can see with my pointer, which the developer is managing, is probably the best place for this idea of dogs on leash, doing whatever they have to do on this basically grass carpet. So we'll probably be able to shift that over now. We've got that agreement. The agreement happened after this. It's a great question about the Goose Creek corridor. It's actually a bigger conversation we're having as part of the Boulder Valley Comp Plan, and I was talking with our Planning and Design Services planning manager who's leading that effort. That's currently designated OSO, which is a very restricted designation as a recreation. And we're looking to see if we can update land use to make it a park designation. Because frankly, this is potentially Goose Creek is a brilliant, utilities, parks, CV, transport corridor where we could all work together like the greenways. So it is a longer term solution to that, but it's definitely come up as like you've raised a great point, Myron, why aren't we taking advantage of the creek in an urban area, the way we have done with the Boulder Creek? The grading of the site, I totally appreciate that. The grading is interesting, and in fact, what we've tried to do is actually take advantage of the grading as best we can with the various levels, and it actually makes the site more interesting. That does lead us to the impervious and how you move through a site with paths when the grading is pretty difficult. I totally agree. We want to remove impervious, and at the same time, we also want to provide universal access. So at the minute you're seeing kind of what looks like concrete. Well, technically, it's funny, we just had this conversation today for North Boulder Park. Could we look at things like resin-bound surfaces, which still are, they're sort of semi-pervious and things like that. There's a Corkeen's, a new service that's come out that is, it's not resin, but it's a similar type of structure, and it is quite porous, but it's also accessible. So there's a few things out on the market that we're hoping to test out, because there's some pretty good development going on in this area at the moment. And no, totally agree. How can we make it? And then your last point about it is funny in parks. I always joke, and I shouldn't really joke about this, but we tend to just fill them up with junk over the years. And if parks people were to be described as characters, they'd be known as hoarders, because the amount of stuff we have in parks. And so there is an aspect to this design. I agree. Initially, frankly, working with a consultant who's been great, they over-designed it, and we've pared it back. But I think as we get better with these 3D models, and I'd be happy to come back to you in, let's say 6 months' time, you can see that walkthrough to make sure that the space does have that quality of not frankly overfilling it, just paring it down to the essential elements. So I really do appreciate your comments that it's definitely some things we're trying to take into consideration.
Maybe other comments. What happens from now till construction actually starts? I mean, you have a space, is it dense? Or is it rain? What is it? What's happening?
We have an agreement with a developer who's been really communicative, and sorry, I just can't remember his name at the moment. Anyway, he used the site. Thank you. He used the site for his mobilization, his staging area, and that is coming to an end. And part of the deal was he leaves the site in the condition he found it, and doing a great job there. And then to your point, there'll be construction fencing around it until it opens, just for safety issues.
Then second question is, why is there a need of a fence on the plaza side? If you go to one of the other perspectives, it seems like there was another view, I think. Yeah, there you go. Go to the bottom left one.
Yeah. And I'll just be clear that the problem with 3D models now is they look so real, you think it's a finished drawing. But I would say that in this case, it was to the earlier point from the other commissioner, sorry, I didn't catch your name. There is a discussion on how do we separate that multi-use path from the park. So, because there could be some speed differences and, for safety perspective, do we need barriers in certain places, especially where there's a blind corner? And I think that's the part where the slope heads down to the Goose Creek path. So you'd be looking at either a drop off at some point, which would need a barrier, or putting the barrier in for sight lines. But that's still to be determined, the details, to be honest. Next time I come back, we could have more information on that.
Can you talk a little bit more about this play structure in the bottom right corner with these life-size pickup sticks?
Yeah. It's this is again, this is just a mock-up. If you think of the one, if you've been down in the civic area next to the farmers market, that's probably a more realistic example of it. We try to keep play structures. Put it this way: 60% of accidents with kids happen over 3 foot, and then 20% happen under 3 foot, and 10% happen on ground level. So if you keep a play structure under 3 foot, you dramatically reduce any chance of incidents, and that's for prefabricated play or nature play. It's just a simple fact. So the one at the civic area remains under 3 foot, yet if you've been out there, it allows, this is the other thing we're trying to do is, at the moment, there's a separation of basically 2 to 6-year-olds and 7 to 12-year-olds in play. And there was a reason for that. It was frankly to make money. In truth, as siblings, if they hang out with those different ages, learn from each other. Kids seeing older kids play, learn from them. So if you look at that civic area structure, you'll notice that from 2 to 12, they're all using the structure to varying degrees of confidence, to varying degrees of learning. And at the same time, you'll save money by not having to build multiple structures with different age ranges and separate those play areas out. So that civic area is a more realistic example, to be honest, than the one you're seeing here.
Okay, but are those loose sticks that are on the ground?
Oh, yes, we do lots of loose parts, and we're finding that, frankly, it's a bit like when you buy the Christmas present and the kids use the cardboard box. The loose sticks of varying sizes, especially for the kids who want to do kind of the collaborative and creative work, or we'll take those over probably to the tree on the right, lean it against the tree, build a shelter. So you see those spreading out. Is there any concern or any interest in that aspect of the work?
Yeah, I am not sure that that's right for this particular site. I would not want one of those to end up in the bike path, for example, right? Because that could cause a serious safety hazard to people, especially commuting in the morning or at night in the dark. And then second, just based on our earlier conversation about some of the challenges that we're having with vandalism in the neighborhood, providing material to do so might be challenging in this particular space.
I really appreciate that comment. If you don't mind, I'll just push back slightly in the sense that, again, I've having done this work and I'll frankly use it. We've got 2 play areas in the city currently underway that were pilots, and I've done this work previously in Oregon. An interesting one is, I'll give an example in the civic area. It's been up for 3 months, and part of it is, even though there's a buck and rail fence up there that's very porous, at the moment, in the last 3 months, and we do a sweep every morning, there's only been 2 needles found in that area. And
Oh, I'm not talking about needles. I'm just talking about somebody picking up a stick and looking threatening.
Oh, all I was going to say was just in the civic area, we've also seen an incident rate drop by 50% in that area, according to PD. And part of it is kind of the respect for the fact it's youth playing. And I'm not trying to argue with you or anything. I'm just saying that it's interesting to see some of the pro benefits coming out of some of this stuff while taking into account the safety issues.
That would be great. That would be amazing. One other question I have is, I did not see the north little sliver of land included in this space. So just across the bridge, and even so it's right beside that parking lot, between the parking lot and the bridge on the right. Yeah, right there. I believe that was previously identified as part of the Pocket Park land in the original TVAP planning.
I'm looking. Anyone? Thoughts?
I'd have to go back and review, see that. but-
Yeah, we will. I'll
You
happily
might-
go back
You
with
might have
Chris.
had it at the beginning of the presentation with your pink area. I don't know if it was highlighted there, but I believe it was in fact in part of the 2007 TVAP plan.
I see. No, that's really helpful information. We'll definitely go back and do some research on that. When I picked this up, there was quite a bit of city attorney and lots of conversations to sort of follow up on. So I'll probably have our property folk do a little bit of research on that. And you're saying it's, if I've got it right, is it exactly like just basically this pocket here?
Yes, that space right there. Yep.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we'll definitely do the research there. That has not come up before. Thank you.
Yeah, it might be a great space again for some of that adult seating, or a little picnic, or a space that is sunbathing in winter, you know, I mean, I know we have got the plaza that we can sit on too, but it's more land that you can do something with and expand your space a little bit, so.
Okay, I will appreciate that. Any other questions?
I like Chris's suggestions to put in a train. I think it's adorable. I'm like, oh, I want a little train.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You got one win to do this.
It's just such a small space and it seems like they're making a lot out of it, so it's exciting and I hope it like be positive with the whole space being activated.
Yeah, no, we appreciate, like, I know working with CV here, we about to have these great partnerships, it makes it so much easier to work with our partners on this together.
I would note again, there are some budget considerations that I'd like for the commission to consider as we get closer to numbers. An opportunity for a contribution from our capital improvement dollars for the districts to help make this project a reality. And we'd love to, when the time is right, to be able to make sure we can get that the recommended support from you all as backup to assist Parks and Rec in this project.
And you mean gap financing, gap money to fulfill the project, is that?
To me, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that everything's getting more expensive, their budget amount is staying the same, because they've got a lot of projects around the city.
Yeah.
And a lot of needs, and I'd want to make sure, and I'd ask you all to help us make sure that this project can live up to what we're hoping.
And we should be able to come back in February or March, I think, in 26.
And we do have funds available to be able to do that.
Chris, what are the legal options for contributing to this, as it is neither exactly parking nor exactly transportation? That wooden train is adorable, but it's not going anywhere.
Well, I'd say we do have some flexibility in the purposes of the district, while it is primarily related to transportation and transportation demand management. There is well-being of the district is still within the realm, and so a train can be seen as a indoctrination tool for the young to encourage them to use that mode of transportation. We can be creative. I think that if we have good backup from our appointed commissioners in the conversation and an opportunity for folks to provide feedback on those types of decisions, and if it's if we can tie it to a specific element of the park that would not happen without the contribution, then it's easier for us to have a good paper trail of that investment. We've done this with Caged dollars on the Pearl Street Mall. Caged funded the Pop Jet Fountains as an example, with the 25th anniversary of that facility. So it's not unfounded or unprecedented for the districts to contribute to things like this, if it generates an overall improvement for the district.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Mark.
You don't mind, I'll excuse me.
All right, moving right along. I'm gonna pass it over to Elliot Labonte for the 2026 budget recommendations and hopefully approval from the commissions.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. As Chris introduced, I'm Elliot Labonte, Senior Manager of Business Services for Community Vitality. I'm hoping you all had a chance to at least peek at this presentation. Seen some nodding, that's great. We'll kind of move along with it relatively quickly. By all means, we will leave time for questions at the end. A little bit of what we're going to try to get into today, some key accomplishments. We'll go over just a couple definitions, just kind of refresh our minds on what government accounting speaking is. We'll look at the overall budget for Community Vitality, jump into the capital improvement plan, we'll look at a little comparison over the last, basically 3 years. And then, we'll talk a little bit more about the timeline and get your guys' feedback. So Boulder Junction, so I know you all know we've got the wayfinding signs out there. Clearly very proud of those. We, also are in the process of Metropolis taking over the ownership, or excuse me, the parking management of, parking interfaces with the customers there, which will be great. It'll tie seamlessly into our current garages here in downtown. So we're very excited about that. It's in progress, we shall say. Of course, the RTD bus station is open, which came nicely with the expansion of our EcoPass program, working on getting part-time as well. And then the Lime scooters, adding that to a transportation process or benefit, excuse me, for residents and employees. And we are seeing a utilization of B-cycle increase as well, which is also great. I'm hoping that just like we saw in our other districts, we've seen a increase in ridership in RTD. So I'm hoping we'll see that same thing in Boulder Junction as well, given that it's so important to the TDM. Some other key accomplishments, just doing some improvements in the area and working on some of the post-development, post-construction restorations, and then also working with Boom Properties, trying to get them as well to continue on the management of that. So jumping into some of the crazy terms we use in government accounting, these are the ones that we'll focus on. They tend to be the ones that cause the most confusion. So I want to make sure we have a good understanding of them before we jump too far in. Last thing I'd like to have you guys do is recommend a budget to city council and not know what you're actually recommending. So let's go over those definitions real quick. Cost allocations. So think of this as a way for us to take from dedicated funds like Boulder Junction, TDM, and Boulder Junction parking and transfer back to the general fund for services that are provided by the general fund. So everything that you see here is basically funded directly from the general fund. So this is a way for us to compensate staff who are paid directly out of that area for services that they provide us. City Attorney's Office certainly is up there. The Clerk's Office with helping with the recruiting process with commissioners, the Communications Department, Human Resources, etc., all really feed into helping provide services to the district, either directly or indirectly. Internal services differs a little bit from cost allocations. These are more often than not, you can kind of think of non-operating costs, non-personnel costs, excuse me. So things like computer software, things like the actual assets, the laptops, putting money in towards replacement of equipment, those types of things. Boulder Junction doesn't have a huge amount of share of these. They're a percentage, a portion of, but it does show up in the use of funds. And then transfers, if there were any transfers, either between one fund and back to one of the Boulder Junctions, between the two Boulder Junctions or Boulder Junction to another fund, is basically what those are. We no longer have any transfers right now in Boulder Junction. All of the debt has been taken care of and all of the transfers have been expired. So reserves, the rainy day fund, AKA savings account for all of our funds. They are required by law that we reserve at least 2 months worth of operating expenses. So operating expenses being personnel and non-personnel, but not the capital or the cost allocation. So 2 months worth equates to about 16.7%. So that's what we hold in reserves, kind of set aside. We don't touch it unless we absolutely have a catastrophic failure in our economy. And that's only if it's necessary, really. So it's just a way for us to really protect and ensure that we never skip a beat with services provided of any of our funds. Boulder Junction is no exception. There's a couple other types. Sick and vacation reserves, those help cover any offsets of, say, an employee termination or separation. and we had to pay out their vacation bank. We wanted to make sure we had enough in there to cover that. Sick, if there was any FMLA costs, those types of things. Currently, that reserve is not set aside for Boulder Junction. Knock on wood, we haven't seen any issues with that. And then, of course, the last one is other reserves, and those can vary depending on what the fund managers in this part would be community vitality or commissioners would help dictate whether or not we need to have them. Again, currently, there's nothing set up for Boulder Junction, and we do not see the current need for it. Fund financials, you'll hear this term quite a bit. We'll actually review the fund financials a little bit here with Boulder Junction, both parking and TDM. I'm hoping you all got the link to OpenGov for Community Vitality's budget within OpenGov. You should have also gotten, there should be some navigation for how to get to the fund financials. If not, we can certainly jump into those. But what it is it's basically a document that shows all of the revenues, the sources, as well as the expenses, and then the balances both before and after those revenues and expenses projected out over 6 years. With the, I guess, technically 7th year being the actuals of what was spent and what was actually earned in that fund. So looking at the city manager's recommended budget for community vitality, the total amount that we're going to city council with is at $24,696,003. You can kind of see how it's broken up against our programs there on the left-hand side for uses. Those are the different programs that we run in community vitality. Boulder Junction is afforded a lot of services from all of these. But mainly the customer service, the district vitality, and administration is the bulk of the programs that really oversee Boulder Junction area. Total sources for the different funds that we have in community vitality is around 14 million. So you can see that there's kind of a big gap, roughly $10 million there. If we've been fortunate enough to acquire accrue, I should say, enough of a fund balance in quite a few of our funds to be able to afford that big difference between our sources and revenues. And we're actually starting to program that quite a bit. So you're going to see that kind of reflected in our capital plan. You can see here next year, we're going forward with a roughly $12 million capital plan. The bulk of it is in CAGID, basically aimed at managing our garages and really doing some CMGC stuff, construction management, general contractor projects. It's basically bringing the people who draw the things, the people who manage the things, all together in one room to make it a seamless project. So we find a lot of efficiencies and savings there. So that's kind of why we're moving forward with that approach. Spruce is currently underway. We're actually making a lot of headway into it. We did find, though, that expenses were coming in quite a bit higher than anticipated. So we are asking for additional appropriation next year to make sure that we can spend that amount that really would bring that garage back up to a high level. I'll kind of skip over some of the other ones that are within CAGID. The Boulder Junction one is really what I wanted to focus on. You'll see there next year we are anticipating doing a large electronic signage around the parking structure, kind of like you see with our parking structures here downtown. If you've been downtown, it allows us to have dynamic messaging. So one of the questions about that park and about wayfinding and about security around the building would be something that we could also tie into these electronic signages. And then if we were to ever have any special events or anything of that nature, it allows us to work with city staff and how we may be able to leverage those electronic signages to promote things as well. The capital improvements for the next 5 years going forward, we want to earmark $100,000 at the minimum to make sure that there is capital funding at least appropriated in the event that, say, we wanted to do a security camera installation. So those projects can come up faster sometimes than we can appropriate money. So we want to make sure it's there and ready for when we hit the ground.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Is the number for capital investment in St. Julian next year 5 million?
That is-
The total?
correct, yep, so,
This is the zero.
it's, 5, yes, there is an additional zero there, thank you for catching that, it is 5 million that we're not 500,000 with a weird comma, so. Yes, thank you for catching that.
Kelly, we're just talking for this purposes of this conversation, the electronic signage belongs to BJAT and the capital improvements, right?
Correct.
What about the public art, the 1% public art?
Great question. So 1% for public art, this is the 1% for public art that is dedicated out of the community culture resiliency and safety tax. So there is a separate 1% for public art policy that kind of tags on with some of the capital improvement programs throughout the city, and it's funded in a very different nature. This one here is actually specifically earmarked. It is not dedicated to any specific district, any specific location. What it does though is it allows us that if there is a CCRS funded capital program, capital project, we have, some funding dedicated and set aside to help put in public art in that capital program. So a great explanation of this would be like for Fire Station 2. You saw there was some new public art that was out in front of that fire station. Some of that funding came from this dedication.
So of our, I guess, next year, 26, $300,000, 1% of that would be associated with us, or how do those projects get assigned the public art funds?
So there is the policy exempts some funds, and Boulder Junction is like that. So the electronic signage is not one of those like, okay, we need to set aside 1% of that 300,000 for public art. There's an opportunity there that we could look at CCRS and work with the arts and culture staff here, but there's nothing that's dedicating 1% of that project to public art. Great question.
And we don't have any capital improvements next year?
Our capital improvement is the electronic signage.
Okay,
So
but
we
nothing
just-
else, there's no other project.
Well,
CV led, so
Correct.
green properties will continue to do their general maintenance, paver, tree replacements, things like that in the plaza area. But for CV led capital, just the bare bones.
right.
And if for some reason next year we don't use the 100,000, or next year, do we get to keep those monies or they go away?
100%. So anything that is unspent, so let's actually do this. You'll see here in the 24, so we're looking specifically at Boulder Junction parking. You can see there's 2 columns there for 2024. One is the revised, that was the budget and how it changed over the year, whether that was ATVs or encumbrance carryovers or capital carryovers. And right next to that, you will see the actuals column. So that's money that actually went out the door. You can see there's about $165,000 that we thought we were going to spend, but we didn't spend. That money just goes right back into the fund balance. So it doesn't go back to the general fund, or I shouldn't say it doesn't go to the general fund. It was never from the general fund. It just remains within the fund and continues to accrue the fund balance. So it can be used for future dates. But the capital program, those monies do roll, but they're still available in future years. So operating dollars, they go back to the fund balance of the BJAT fund. Capital dollars, they stay in the account, they roll. Right, and that's a great distinction between the two. So to Chris's point, unused capital dollars. So for instance, that 2024 revised of 130,185. We didn't spend it all. In 2024, we didn't spend really any of it. Well, if you look at the 2025 revised, and I apologize, I know it's not a like for like, there's some other revisions that happened in 2025. But you can see we originally appropriated $100,000 for capital, but the revised amount was 412,000. That 312,000, a portion of it was the carryover of that $130,000. So capital dollars are treated a little bit differently. They don't have to be reappropriated every year. And they're, I guess, more easily accessible for expenditure without going through the reappropriation process with council. And that is just capital dollars. Operating dollars such as personnel and non-personnel do not do that. So we have to ask for that reappropriation. Yes, Robin.
Do these numbers, so I'm looking at, I'm sorry, I'm a looker aheader. On page 28, when we're talking about the revenue projections are 3% above the previous year, is that assuming that we do the mill reduction, or is that before that?
Is this for parking? That
Yes,
is assumed, yes.
that assumes that we're doing the mill reduction and we still have a 3% projected above.
The 3% is on TDM if you're on page 28.
Oh, okay.
TDM.
This
Okay.
one is accommodating the reduction, and that one has
Okay,
a lower projection.
thank you.
Yep. So, let me go back one slide. So this kind of gives you a little bit of taste of what 2024 looked like, what we thought it was going to look like, what it actually looked like. How we went into 2025, of course, we were here in these seats last year approving or recommending the 2025 budget, which that's reflected in that column, the 2025 adopted. The revised budget reflects any changes, like I said, about capital carryover, encumbrance carryover. So encumbrances or contracts, we said, hey, we're going to pay this supplier, and we didn't actually get the project completed by then. So there's still money that we obligate to pay them once they finish the work. So that's the encumbrance carryover, and any adjustments to base, which we didn't have any for Boulder Junction parking. So that's the difference between adopted and revised. And then you can see kind of those two budgets compared to what we're recommending for 2026. So to Robin's point, on the next slide, we can kind of see a little bit of how those changes went into play, what it actually means from a narrative perspective. And in Boulder Junction parking, really good news is revenue projections came 50% over budget, which is great, right? We want to, if we're going to be wrong about anything in budget and it's going to be over, we want it to be over in revenues. And likewise, if we're going to be wrong about anything on expenses, we want them to be under. So ideally, we're very close, right? Because that means we have a really good understanding, because these revenue projections help feed into what can we actually provide for services in Boulder Junction. So we want to get closer and closer, which we are. The main thing here that makes these revenue projections so difficult is the speed at which that area was developed, and then how those property values came into play for the mill levies. So I'm going to say selfishly that these numbers will get closer and closer and closer as time goes on. We're actually seeing that with this year. We are getting much closer to what our revenue projections are. Same thing with the expenses. And then to Robin's point, if we look at parking, you can see that the revenue projections are projected to be significantly lower, 34%. So comparing 25 adopted with 26 recommended, this does take into account the mill levy reduction request that we are going to put forward to council. It is one of the motions that we will be asking the parking commissioners to look at. So this would take that into account. So it's not 50%, which is basically what we're doing for a mill levy reduction. A lot of that has to do with because property values continue to grow. There's also interest earnings from the fund balance as it accrues. So it's not a like for like. So that's why it's not 50% below, it's 34%. Our expense assumptions, though, you can see are quite a bit higher, mainly driven because of that $300,000 capital improvement plan that we want to put forward next year for parking.
One thing I want to note on the revenue side that did not show up clearly in the projections for the fund financials for VJET parking is the city manager's recommended budget included a 50-cent increase in hourly parking rates, both on street and in garages. And so presuming that, and we've talked about these, we're saying modest increase and tying the 50 cents to that the definition of modest. Presuming that city council supports acting as the board of directors of EJET Parking, supports a modest increase in parking rates. We are going to bring to you at the next meeting a recommendation of a revised parking pricing structure for Depot Square Garage. Right now, it's $1.25 per hour with a $24 max or $25 max for the day. Preferably, we would like to transition to as similar as possible pricing structure as our downtown garages, which is moving to $1.75 per hour for the first 6 hours, then a $15 flat fee for anything longer than 6 hours. We also have the $3 product in the downtown garages to consider as well. One question there is whether we go free on weekends and holidays at Boulder Junction. There are some key considerations on that front associated with our other owners. And I need to take a look at our parking management agreement to see if we're even allowed to have free parking in that garage, considering that owners like the Hyatt, they charge their guests to use their parking spaces. If we are offering parking for free to public parkers, then that disincentivizes folks from telling the Hyatt that they are parking associated with their use, and that translates into a significant revenue hit for their operation. So just want to be careful and conscious of those dynamics. And so at the next meeting, we'd like to bring you some more details on our recommendations on how to follow through with council's intentions with the budget and what that could mean for a recommended pricing structure for Depot Square Garage.
Elliot, I have questions about the second column here, 25 adopted, there's 26 recommended. Saying revenue projections are down from previous year, what is the previous year being referred to?
You're talking about this projections of 34% below previous year.
Yeah.
That's comparing 2025 adopted versus the 2026 recommended.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I guess then putting those two things together, it's saying that revenue projections basically went up from 23 to 24 and then back down 25. Is that correct? Or remained higher, or anticipated to remain higher at 25 and then go down at 26?
You got it. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. So growth, 23, 24, 25, and then falling down in 26. Not because we see any headwinds, but because of the conversation around mill levy reduction.
Yes, got it.
Yep. Great. Transitioning now to TDM.
And sorry, on the
Oh, yeah.
mill levies are calculated.
Five.
Five.
So there's currently,
less.
yeah, there's currently 10 mills assessed in parking. We're proposing doing it temporary reduction down to 5 mills.
Temporary until we want it to be.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of mill levy movement, the way that these districts were formed. So we have that flexibility and we're kind of leaning into it. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks. I support that mill levy reduction. I think this has been a #1 goal for this year and last year. They're going to have this bigger conversation. I think this or somewhere around this is likely where we would have ended up. I was just hoping to have a full evaluation and to look at the numbers and have this discussion. And I'm still hoping we can have that conversation and kind of better understand. I've been on here for, it seems like a decade now. And I'm still wondering what this parking district actually does. I mean, we own like a third of a parking garage, and I'm trying to understand how operating expenses can jump like 90% from one year to the next from just operating a parking garage.
Well, are you referring the 87% above previous year?
Yeah.
So that's really tied to the investment we want to make of those electronic signages. So it's not, I guess it's.
So it's not operating expense, so that's just a capital investment into.
Correct. So yeah, this isn't operating expenses over, it's full budget expense over. So
Got it.
operating
Okay.
expenses, if we look at the previous slide here, we're going from roughly 75,000 to 141,000 in personnel, 111,000 to 115 in non-personnel. And then 21,000 down to 20-ish thousand in transfers and cost allocations. Again, it's just cost allocations here. So the significant change, albeit with personnel kind of being exempt, the other significant change that's really making and driving that 87% increase is going from $100,000 in 2025 to $300,000 in 2026.
Okay.
Yep.
That, doubling up of personnel from 75 to 141, what is that?
So there were some changes by central finance, given the changes of cost allocations and the headwinds of the general fund for how personnel was appropriated across the funds, across multiple funds.
So the district is paying more to the general fund for staffing.
The district is paying more for the current staffing that's in CV. So not to the general fund, but directly to the staff at Community Vitality.
Can we get some more breakdown on what that number is? What exactly we're getting for $141,000?
Yeah, I know it used to be 3%. So Boulder Junction parking paid, well, roughly 3%. It would change depending on which staff member it was. But Boulder Junction parking used to pay roughly 3% of any individual's salary, if you will.
So, but I'm still gonna, what is it that's jumping so much? Well,
So prior to next year, 30% of my salary was paid for out of the general fund.
Correct.
And so the finance department, and this isn't just happening in Community Vitality, any departments that have dedicated funds with some mix of general fund, they have reduced the amount of the general fund paying for my salary, which is translated into, my salary doesn't go down, but the portions that the districts are paying of my salary have proportionally gone up.
Correct. And that's Boulder Junction, both parking TDM, that's KJID downtown, that's UJID. And to Chris's point, that's really any dedicated fund. So open space would have seen this, Parks and Rec would have seen this.
so the districts are filling up the gap in the
Correct.
general fund.
Correct.
Okay.
This is, the big change here is our general fund, our biggest general fund operation up until 2025 is the parking enforcement team, which is makes up probably about 10-15% of our operation. That is moving out of Community Vitality effective next month and over to the Planning Development Services. So Planning and Development Services general fund budget for 2026 is going up. Ours is coming down because we're not going to be working on that general fund operation anymore moving forward.
Correct. So it, in some regards, it frees up some of our time to focus more on our districts. Because that specific function that was general funded is moving to another department. And it also allows us to conceptualize and think about things like, what are some really good investments we can do at Boulder Junction, like the electronic signage? How can we put more effort into serving our districts better?
So you're saying for $70,000, we're getting better service for the district, right?
Hypothetically, yes.
Okay. It's interesting.
Well, we'll hold Chris to that.
There you
Chris,
go.
better service staff.
Did you have a
Um,
question?
I do. Yeah, Chris, you mentioned the pricing increase proposed for the garage. Is there a corresponding one for the street parking?
Yes.
Especially when you look about the Hyatt and cannibalizing their parking revenue.
Yes, so the city manager's recommended budget includes a 50-cent increase to the base on-street rate. So right now it's $1.50 per hour. The recommendation is to increase it to $2 per hour for on-street.
Okay. And the on-street parking will continue to go to general fund instead of within the parking district, even though it's within the parking district.
That is correct. I will say the contributions to the savings account to replace those assets, the parking meters, the pay stations, if you will, also comes out of the general fund. So the district is not paying to replace those meters. The general fund is paying to replace those meters, as well as the general fund is paying to replace those meters, and hence that's kind of why one of the reasons the general fund receives the revenue from those meters.
Okay, and then finally, to Kevin's point, we own a portion of the garage. I don't have any issue tracking the 87% increase, tying back up to the 300,000. And we certainly are a very healthy fund, but are the other garage owners contributing into any of that signage as beneficiaries of people being able to find the parking?
No, this is a district initiative. The other owners do pay into the association, so while yes, we own 100 parking spaces equivalent of the garage, we also have shared ownership of the common elements of the plaza, the elevators of the building, and so all the owners contribute into that. They do have, there is a budget that's been identified for improved wayfinding in the garage that all the owners are contributing toward that. This is something that we at CV feel like it's happening out in the right of way. It's not part of the common elements of the association that would help us, particularly in communicating the public parking, which is sole. We are the district is the benefactors of folks who go for the public parking. So totally appreciate the question. We could always maybe talk about some sort of sponsorship of if you want a message that says something about coming to Boulder Junction that benefits RTD or the Hyatt, you gotta pay us.
Got to pay for signage. That's right.
I absolutely believe in helping people find the public parking. So thank you for that clarification.
Great. All right.
Or maybe it's just a tack onto that. Maybe it's just, I'm sure this is the intent, but it's an opportunity to use it beyond just the parking, for just your quad events, for other opportunities to bring people into the districts besides just the parking garage.
Absolutely. Yeah, our signs downtown have been utilized for a lot of different reasons. It's not just for parking. For instance, when Sundance was coming to tour Boulder, we had signs up. We used those signs, I should say, to broadcast the message, so welcome to Boulder, Sundance, etc. So we've used those signs for a lot of other reasons besides just parking. And that's why we went with the electronic signage, is to have that flexibility to be able to do dynamic signage.
And the $300,000 is based on
Current costs of what it basically cost our garage to put one in here. So we've done all 4 garages, all 5 garages.
4 of the garages. The biggest issue that we're gonna have is that looking at where the sign should go, electricity does not exist there. So then we have to move electricity to those points and then install large signs. So it's more complicated than just like putting a sign right where we want it. And going to your comment earlier about wanting to celebrate that RTD station reopened, where we had identified where one of these signs could go is on Pearl, and it would be visible from that, if you're starting in the east and driving west, you would be able to make a turn into that garage and see that RTD has relaunched services there. So it would give us an opportunity to celebrate those sorts of things happening in the district.
And I don't know if you guys have been following the diagonal safety mobility. But one of the routes that they're planning to add from Longmont down to Boulder, one of those routes is dedicated to stop at Boulder Junction as well. So RTD has plans to continue to expand services there. And your neighbors up in Longmont would be coming through that district on a pretty regular basis. It's a flyer, so it's every 30 minutes. Rebecca?
What are the projected operating expenses for the signage after it goes live?
That is a great question. Right now, we don't that is through Metropolis? No, they do our counts. Do we have operating expenses? No, I don't think we have.
Well, it
There
will
would
need to
be
be powered.
maintenance of.
That's where the owners will contribute to the signs, is we will just tap into the owners association power, and let the owners association pay it. Great question. The operations, are pretty minimal, other than the staff programming and then occasional maintenance.
Yeah, we haven't seen any dramatic cost increases on any of the signs that we have installed, and we have multiple signs at some garages, and they haven't triggered oh my God, we need to budget more instance. So, from my perspective, operational costs are not significant enough to warrant an increase in non-personnel at this time.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. TDM, so similar picture, similar narrative, similar concept here across the different different years. I will jump ahead. I just want to be conscious of time. I know we only have about 10 more minutes left in our traditional meeting sense. So we'll talk a little bit about the narrative. Again, same thing in this, projections came in a little bit higher than we expected, 11% as opposed to 50%. In part because the district is so much bigger. So the larger the district it is, the less variability there is in how those property values change. The expense assumptions came in under budget. A portion of that is because of the capital. Actually, a large portion of that is because of the capital that we had programmed for that. Looking forward, though, a pretty modest growth in revenue projections, trying to take some things into consideration, like the Senate bill that was passed in the end of 24 that kind of hopefully curtailed some large increases in property taxes. And then again, kind of looking back at the personnel, there's that same kind of instance. Again, we talked a little bit about this and how every district is having to pay a little bit more for staffing costs due to the general fund constraints. So this is really the meat of the meeting we wanted to talk about here. So in working with consultants, doing some of the district analysis work, and also thinking about what we're trying to do going forward and some of the thoughts we have there, we're recommending that we do at least a temporary reduction to Boulder Junction parking for the time being. This would take effect in 2026. What that means is it would reflect the I know it says 25 tax collections, but it's the 25 mill levy that is collected in 2026, is how that would work. So I apologize, property taxes are always operating in the rear and it makes things very difficult. But that's our recommendation. This comes a lot from you all, and having these conversations, and your connection with the community there, looking at our, the revenue needs in terms of like, what do we actually see? Do we see anything that's warranted of large expanses in our expense categories? And at the time, we do not. And then also just kind of aligning with the district priorities and what that district is doing. So that's really where we're coming through with that. I know we've talked a little bit about that. So lots of questions so far throughout the presentation. I really appreciate it. Was there any other final questions before we move on to the legal, quote unquote, legal language?
So there's still reserves, right? And what are those reserves?
That's a great question. So the reserves, again, that's that 16.7% of operating. So if we look at TDM here, for instance, that's 68,000 that is in reserve for 2025. If you were to add up that 51,000 and that 332,000, in theory, I'm hoping no one's checking my math right now because I should probably double check my math, but it would be $68,401. And again, the idea is 2 months worth of operating expenses held in reserves in the event of a natural disaster, an economic collapse, etc. so that we have at least 2 months worth of money to be able to pay for services that we provide to Boulder Junction.
And correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm new here, but I thought there was a giant pot of money somewhere unspent from all these years.
That is the fund
The
balance.
fund balance, yeah,
So that's a little bit different.
and that remains intact, right?
Correct. Yep. So that basically think of that as that's your full bank.
He knows what it is.
Okay.
He's just not seeing it on the sheet.
Okay.
He's
Thank
not
you.
seeing a balance sheet.
So, let me, real quick, I will share. Go
Hey,
ahead, Kevin, you pulling this up?
Hey, Chris, I apologize. I gotta run to go grab my kids here by 6 or else they
Oh,
charge me.
do we have a quorum?
We do
So-
have a
Can
quorum. We need to keep it
Yeah,
warm.
let's go with the motions then.
Hey, can I vote in
Okay.
favor? Can I give you my vote now before I gotta run?
Yeah, I think that that can be well reflected. If you can say a motion, we just want to make sure we know what your vote is on.
I can make a motion to approve, or I can give someone my proxy.
Well, and you are just on
TDN.
I'm parking.
Okay. So
He's
let's
on
take
parking.
so let's go ahead and do that motion language real quick. Kevin, if you wouldn't mind reading that slide.
I make a motion to recommend a city council serving as the board of directors for the Boulder Junction General Improvement District parking, adopt the city manager's 2026 recommended budget, appropriating money to defray expenses and liabilities pertaining to the Boulder Junction General Improvement District parking fund.
2 seconds. All in favor? I'll do it for parking.
Aye.
fund.
I'll post.
Okay, and then wait,
Great, the minutes will reflect a unanimous vote in approval of the motion, including the language around, oh, this is a different motion.
So then, Kevin, if you
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
wouldn't mind doing this one as well?
he wants to do this one.
Yeah.
If not, I'll do it, Kevin.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
Motion to recommend city council serving as the board of directors for the Boulder Junction General Improvement District parking. Adopt the city manager's 2026 recommended budget to temporarily reduce the Boulder Junction General Improvement District parking from 10 mils to 5 mils. Do I have a second?
Second.
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Long time coming.
Yeah.
All right. So the minutes will
you.
reflect that. Thanks so much, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks all. Sorry to interrupt. Appreciate it.
No,
See you next.
that's okay.
Oh, wait, we need minutes.
Oh, I don't need.
Oh, okay, never mind.
We're good. Have a great night, Kevin.
All right. Thanks. See ya.
So I guess while we're on that, Daniel, I will happily show you and the rest of you as well, the fund financials in OpenGov. Do you want to go ahead and do the motion language for TDM while we're on it?
One last question related.
Yes.
So $300,000 is coming out of the fund,
Out of parking fund,
out of parking fund.
correct?
Okay.
Yep. Would anybody like to make a motion for TDM?
I'm on both boards, so I'll do it. Motion to recommend city council serving as board of directors for the Boulder Junction General Improvement District Transportation Demand Management. Adopt the city manager's 2026 recommended budget, appropriating money to defray expenses and liabilities pertaining to the Boulder Junction General Improvement District Transportation Demand Management Fund. Do I have a second? From a TDM member.
Second.
All in favor?
So.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right,
All
that was
right.
easy.
Thank you.
Now we need discussion.
Yeah.
We got our motions, but.
That's right. So let me real quick, I do want to take a minute to jump in and show you all. The portal has changed some. There it goes. So it's a little bit different from last year, but it's actually, in all honesty, a lot easier to navigate. So this top menu will always stay there. So if you click on department budgets, that's where you can come in to see community vitality and the whole budget. You can see how it's broken down by fund. You can see personnel, how much staff, etc. The fund financials lives under the fund financial tab. And I don't know why it's not in alphabetical order. It drives me absolutely bonkers. But here is Boulder Junction Access District. I'm gonna click on this and it's gonna take me
Fingers
to
crossed.
Capital Development Fund. Oh no, here's the Boulder Junction Capital Improvement Fund. All right, so
So
this one's
this
going to
TDM
take us to TDM. But Daniel, to your point, so if you look here at this top line, this beginning fund balance and this ending fund balance, that's just money that is either there at the end of the year, beginning fund balance, or at the end of the year, ending fund balance, that just sits in the fund until it gets appropriated.
And collects interest.
And collects interest to, yes, so then it's not an insignificant amount. You know, we're looking at, you know, $30-ish thousand every year that the fund earns in interest just based on that fund balance. Would I say it's great to let that fund balance get huge so you make a bunch of interest? Probably not. You want to make sure that the money is being used for services that taxpayers are paying. But if it does sit there and does accrue over time, it will earn interest.
What
So what
percentage
percent-
interest are we earning?
It's a modest 3 to 5% given the markets. It's not great, but it's better than a savings account.
So what's the number? I'm sorry, I can't see. How much money is on the TDM? How much money is on the park?
So right now, TDM is looking at a beginning fund balance, projected beginning fund balance. That's assuming we spend absolutely every single penny and we earn absolutely every single penny in 25. So a lot of assumptions there, as we saw from the previous slide, 50% from projections, et cetera. You're looking at about a $2 million beginning fund balance in 2026.
In 27, does it have the reduction in bills already calculated?
So this is TDM, so this would not.
This would not, this is no,
Correct. So let's
But
go.
as you can see, the increase is about 175,000 in the beginning balance next year. So we have a little wiggle room projected in the 2026 budget in TDM.
Right, so in this fund financial, you do see that reflected here. You see 2026 looking at,
Zoom in some.
oh, sorry, thank you. You see 2026 looking at around $2 million for a beginning fund balance. Now that money is collected in 26, so it wouldn't technically show up and impact anything until the beginning fund balance of 27. Which you do see there is a reduction of about $2 million. Again, sorry, $200,000. There's a little bit of a difference with parking in that it actually earns money through its parking products. So there's a little bit of a buffer there for hits to revenue. So that's one of the things to consider, but you can see that top line item is that 442,000 in 25 versus 254 in 26. That's your property taxes.
And then you can see again, the projected starting fund balance is slightly
Decreasing.
decreasing, but that is again presuming that we are spending every dollar that is allocated out of operating and collecting every dollar and nothing more than anticipated on the revenue side.
Yep.
So this is why we, through our analysis and the district work that we've been doing, we felt like a 50% reduction in the mill levy would put us in a safe zone, and we'll continue to monitor. All right. Thank you so much, Elliot. I'm gonna fly through because we're over time. There was a draft agenda for our Joint Commission Summit included in your packet. We've met with the University Hill Commercial Area Management Commission. They had no changes. This might still evolve. I just wanted to share this agenda with you all. It's on page 34 of your packet. If there's anything that you were hoping that we would be discussing that you're not seeing on there, now would be the time. It doesn't mean we won't still add some things and make some changes. We'll want to make sure you have an idea of where we were headed with the agenda. We can go through it specifically, but in the interest of time and hoping you were able to review it in the packet, I'm happy to move on.
It's great.
I'm seeing a thumbs up. Great, we will, again, there may still be some tweaks. We have to meet with DMC still. But looking forward to having everybody get together on what's our date? October 20th. Let's see. That concludes matters from staff.
Sorry, I have to flip back about 24 pages here. Okay. Do we have matters from commissioners?
One
Rebecca?
really minor one that the first slide of Elliot's made me think of. I think last time we were here, we talked about the branding of Boulder Junction and the signs that were done, but we realized we didn't have, is it correct, that there's no like visual identity or graphics that are associated with that live on? That something,
We do not have a branding guide or anything for Boulder Junction,
okay.
currently.
I think it struck me as like there was a brand and any kind of created those physical signs, it would be amazing to have it also live on as sort of logos that could be on Boulder Junction events or it's such a recognizable silhouette like on the sign, sort of events going on there. I don't know what it takes now to go back and circle back to the company who did that. Ask for that, something creative, but want to throw it out there as an idea.
Certainly something to think about in annual work planning, whether it's, you know, as far as timing and resources go, but thanks for, yeah, it's certainly a good point. I do know that as part of our general citywide economic vitality strategies specifically focused on districts, we've hired a photographer to go around to all the districts and at certain times of the year when things look really, really nice to take some photos for us so we have updated photos, especially now that Boulder Junction is getting mostly built out. So there is work happening in that area. More work could be done specifically on the branding guide for sure.
I would like to bring back the giant banner, whether it's coordinated with RTD or we're doing our own. I mean, people just don't know. If we wait too long, we'll miss 6 months of no people not showing up or parking here or using it. And that RTD station it's the success of the district, right? It's what makes it transit-oriented development. So to the degree that we can inform everybody and double down on the marketing, I think we'll all benefit from.
I will note, the city has very, very strict rules around banner signage.
Okay.
But we do, what is allowed is if you want to stand out there with a sign and put their hand, that is perfectly allowed, and we could be happy to get you maybe we can get Will out there with
I'm gonna get one of those Play-Doh.
Exactly. We are working on some loosening of banner rules in anticipation of Sundance Film Festival. And there is certain flexibility that we have. That's why we have the digital signs out in the public right of way, as we have been able to maneuver within the sign code in the public right of way for informational signs. But there are very strict rules around private property and attached banners for a variety of reasons. So appreciate the problem we're trying to solve is making sure that people are aware that the station is reopened. It's a great place to coach transit. Strategies and methods to get there, we might need to brainstorm that.
Something that might be more accessible, Chris, then would be making sure that there is information within the hop bus. So FF4 is going to be limited for people driving back and forth around because that's just weekday commute services. But with the hop coming across 30th, that is going to attract a lot more of residents and employees within Boulder. So improving information that's available on hop so when people are using it other times of the evening or weekends that they can go think, oh yeah, I can go to Boulder Junction now on this. And then maybe even something partnering with our sister CV boards for Pearl Street of, now you can connect on a single ride between Pearl and whatever businesses that we want to attract them to. Like it can't be the Depot restaurant right now, but any of the other things.
That makes sense.
And visitors guides for Sundance as well, right? You can stay at the Hyatt and get everywhere in town without having to rent a car. Isn't that great when you visit us?
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Motion to adjourn?
No,
I was just checking to see any other comments. Okay. Notifying everyone that the next CV commission meeting is 3 p.m. Monday 20th, as we just saw. And the BJAG commission meeting is 4 p.m. Wednesday, November 12th. And with that, I think we can adjourn. Oh, wait.
Are you gonna vote on the July meeting minutes since everyone's here?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Now that everybody's here, I don't think we had any comments from anyone before, but we do have new people in the room. Do you have any adjustments to the July meeting minutes? Okay, I move to accept the meeting minutes. Do we have a second? All in favor? Okay,
All right, now you're free.
now we're free.
Thank you, Robin.
Have a great night, everybody. Be well.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you, Ellie.